Never lost on me the privilege and honor that it is to be able to have someone actually want you to tell the story, want to see you. I feel so honored and privileged that you would have me here. And I just want to share just a little bit of my story. I'll just start it out. I'm from Venetian. And yes, I, as of this year, I will be 56 years old. Man, hold on there, hold on. But what's so amazing, I was born in 1968 in Glen, the whole thing. Let me tell you something about Glen. A lot of you guys who know realty and know, what the city's all about, is that it was an amazing city at one time. In 1968,
sure.
General Motors was the #1 corporation in the world. It was like Google.
Right.
They made every car. You couldn't get a car unless it was GM. And all of a sudden, like around, all the way until I was about 10 years old, life was good in the city. But then once the auto industry started to fall and all this stuff that happened, man, it was starting to get really bad. And a lot of times when the auto industry kind of went down, then the crack epidemic kind of took over the rest of the city, and it was devastating. But I also, on top of all the bad things that were starting to happen in the city and all this stuff, I had a problem at home. And at home, and I have to tell you, during the 10 years, even the good years in Glen, around when I was 5 years old, one of my earliest memories is my father coming into the living room and knocking my mother out. And I mean, point, with balling up his fist and hitting her in the face as hard as he could. And that changed me, man. I mean, as a 5-year-old boy, I never felt more helpless than at that moment. You want to save your mom, you want to do something, but he's just, my father, people think I'm big. To me, he was gigantic. Big hand. Oh my God, he walked around the house and it was like it was thunder, you know what I mean? And he had a drinking problem, he was an alcoholic, and there was nothing we could do. I'll be honest, man, I know you talk about house and everything and clean and all that, but listen, when I was a kid, I'd be in the bed. I went to bed till I was 14, because it was just so traumatic. I didn't know what was going to happen, man. There was police coming.
So you're on exile all the time.
It was a really, really hard way to come up, man. And this is one reason why I looked at, I was talking to David backstage, man. I can't believe the circumstances I came out of.
But okay, so now your experience of abuse, you're seeing it firsthand. You're a 5-year-old kid. How do you? A lot of people end up emulating what they see. Even though they say I'm not going to be like that, I'm not going to be doing this kind of stuff, I'm not going to, I don't want to be like that, they end up being drawn into that because that's what they start programming themselves into that, and it becomes normalized. So what shifted your mind to be like, hey, you know what, this is not right, I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to fall victim to it, and I got to protect my mom at 5 years old. What goes through your...
I'll be straight honest with you, man. The one thing that I learned as a young man was that this was a man's world. I learned the wrong lessons. And I was not unscathed. I actually thought, because of the way my father behaved, I thought just because I was a man, I was more valuable than all the women in my life. Because everything told me that. My mom, she had no say. My sisters had no say. My aunts and grandmothers, they had no say. And but the thing is, everything in that world taught me that. When my dad went to work and I watched how that went down. In sports, it was the same way. In the locker room, it was like, hey, you know what I mean? It was like, it was all this down talk about women, the whole thing. It was just the way it was. And I tried to fit in. And this is where abusers create abusers. Because there was a thing where, you start to fit in, you want to be accepted, you look at everybody and you realize, well, okay, there were so many things that I saw, even coming up as a teenager in the sports world, that I turned my I turned a blind eye to.
Because it was normal.
Hey man, you gotta understand, like, one thing in the world of football, you know, guys, just think about guys. Guys, you can be dumb, but you can push your way through life. If you're big and strong, you gotta make the thing happen. But women have to think their way out of situations. And this is what makes women a lot smarter than most men.
I agree. We agree.
I mean, this is a fact. And, you know, I learned to push my way through life most of the time. And these are some of the wrong lessons that I learned. I learned to push my way through things and through people. Let me tell you, man, I realized that violence was the way for a long, long time. I remember getting angry. I had a huge temper. That was one thing that came from growing up in that household. And I would take it out on anybody who incurred my wrath, man. I got in so many fights.
I mean, are these people living still?
Well, this is the thing, man. You know, first of all, you start by getting beat up. I got beat up.
I don't believe that, Terry.
No, believe it.
You Terry, you get beat up?
Believe it. No, believe it. Because you get off the bus, you take one thing wrong to some people, and you get your butt kicked. Then you go to the gym. Then you start working out. Then you say, I vow that will never happen to me again. And I want to be the one throwing the punches instead of the one taking the punches. And finally, I got big. And finally, I got strong. And finally, I was able to pick people up, put them on their head. But this is the thing. Listen, man, I'm being honest. I'm just telling you the real. It was so crazy that here I am. I gotta give it up to my beautiful wife, Rebecca. We've been married for 35 years. But it's early in my marriage, and you know, I never would put my hands on my wife. I would never do anything. But I was abusive. And when I say abusive, it was verbal. It was a mind game. It was one of those things like, you know, why do you think you should do this? And I always was judging all her decisions. And I wouldn't listen or take any of her wisdom because I thought, again, I'm the man. It's me. And then when we would go places and do things and somebody incurred my wrath, somebody bumped into my shoulder, or somebody did something that I felt was disrespectful, I would go swinging. I mean, again, I would pick them up and throw them over her head onto their own head. And finally, this happened so many times because I started to get more famous. You know, in football, it was kind of like, yeah, you know, that's how you do it. But now you're running for entertainment, and now you're doing this kind of thing. And she was like, Terry, you have to promise me that you will not, can't handle this violence anymore, or we're gonna lose you. First of all, somebody's gonna kill you, you know, or you're in jail. And then when the police come, they can shoot you. She's like, you have a family, you have daughters, you have a son, you have to be there for them, right? But this is one of the things that I didn't listen. And what was so pivotal about that kind of lifestyle, the whole thing, is that I was successful. Like, people give you props for being able to do that stuff. In fact, it was like, yeah, you did your way, man, you did the whole thing. And other guys looked at it admirably. But the problem was, I was miserable. And the problem was, my wife was miserable. And my kids were miserable. And I would be yelling at the kids, and once everything is your way or the highway, hey man, you give your whole family no choices. And I became what I would call a bad dad.
So you grew up, so there was no physical violence in that, obviously laying in hand, but you ruled the house.
Again, it was verbal. I mean, and I'll be honest with you, a lot of people out here, you know, one thing is about verbal abuse, and this is the thing that hurt the most, is that it actually affects how you think about yourself. You know what I mean? And I remember hearing my father saying no one will ever, telling my mother that nobody ever wants you. You know, he would hit her and then look on the ground and she on the floor and he's like, look what you made me do. As if it was her fault. And man, and these are things that I had to come to grips with, but this is the deal. And with all the things that I've been through, which was such a crazy situation, I had to realize there was a moment when my wife said, that's it. That's it. It was enough. It was over. And again, me being this, what I call Superman, the whole thing, I had developed an addiction to pornography. Okay, we're gonna get real now. We're gonna get real today. We're gonna get real.
I don't think you have skeptics.
No, you don't have to. I share.
It's hard to do for anybody.
No, again, this is one of the things that, because listen, pornography taught me that men were more important than women. Okay, women were just objects. And I remember being in the NFL, and this is the NFL week. And we would go to the strip club, and everybody would be up there, and the girls would be up there. And then all of a sudden, a girl would come down and start to talk. And she's like, hey, my name is Trixie, and I got kids, and all that stuff. And I'm like, hey, stop. Yo, you're ruining the experience. But you know why she was ruining the experience? Because she was becoming a human being right before my eyes. Before she's a picture. Before she wasn't even human. It was like you're just a doll. You're just a fantasy. You're just a picture. And then when you start to talk, all of a sudden you become human. And that bothered me. And this is the situation I was in. This is the messed up headspace that I was in. And this kind of behavior led to me actually being unfaithful to my wife. And I went to a massage parlor years back, and I was unfaithful, and I vowed I would never tell. I vowed I would never, ever, ever. This is the secret. I'm going to my grave where no one will ever know. This is it. And when my wife would try to bring things up, I make up arguments. Just trying to get into an argument, trying to get out of the whole thing. And all of a sudden, 10 years after this happened, we had an argument on the phone. And you gotta understand, I was very successful. And I'm talking movies, TV shows, stuff. So I didn't have anybody to really call me on my crap. Okay? Which everybody needs someone in their life that's gonna tell them the real. But everybody was just telling me, hey man, you're Terry Crews, you're wonderful, you're awesome. And I was like, yeah, thank you. So there's no real reason to get back. But my wife never did. She was like, Terry, there's something wrong. There's something I detect. She said, what is it I don't know about you, Terry Crews?
That's a very loaded question.
Listen, man, and you know what? I got tired. I got tired of living two lives. I got tired of being one way outside the house, another way inside. And I told her. And she was like, I can't believe this. I'm done. I'm out. It's over. And I'm like, no, but I told you. It's all good, right? Full disclosure. This is how stupid men can be. I'm just trying to, I'm going to say, man, this is how stupid Terry Crews can be. Okay? Because the ego was still like, hey, I'm honest here. Right? Yeah.
And I mean, in our minds, it's taken, right?
After years of being dishonest. And, well, this is the thing, this is what's so blew me away, man. I'm cool as like a Holy Spirit. But what was crazy was that what I used to tell her is like, why does she believe me? That's what I used to walk around thinking. But the question I should have been asking is, why am I lying? You notice how there's two different ways to phrase that. One was all her, the other one was all me. Now, I got a story. This is what's so crazy, man. Every man in his life is either a fool, a victim, or a king. And when I say this, what I mean is that you're a fool. Guys, you're young, whatever, we do lots of foolish things. Everyone has done something very foolish, probably in this room. Okay, you go, oh, why did I do that? That's like, okay. But then when you're a fool, all of a sudden you mess things up. All of a sudden there's things that will go wrong. And then you turn into the victim stage. And then you can say, oh man, it was the fact that I grew up in Venetian, and it was the fact my father beat my mother, and it was the fact we were poor, it was the fact that I pulled my hamstring the other day, it was the fact that, and you could come up with every excuse in the book. Let me tell you, the table will always be full of excuses. And you're right. And you are correct. But let me tell you about the king stage. The king or queen stage is when you accept responsibility for every decision in your life, good and bad. And it's on you. It's you. And let me tell you, when my wife left and she was gone, and I had lost my family was out. I called my good friend and I said, hey man, I lost my family, it was over. I was in tears, it was over. I never saw it happen. And he said, hey man, Terry, I can't promise you're gonna get your wife and family back, but I can say this, you need to get better for you. And now understand, I didn't understand what that meant. As a man, you did good things to get Scooby snacks, is what I like to call them, you know? You did good things, I'm going to get sex tonight, I did good things, you know? You work hard, I'm going to get this money. I did this, and where's my Scooby snacks? But doing good just for the sake of doing good was a foreign concept.
So you had to come to that conclusion to put the work in, but it was foreign to you, you didn't realize that.
Well, I went to a place where I got counseling for the first time. I mean, therapy. And I was like, this is great. Because you gotta understand too, coming up in Venetian, even in my culture, they were like, hey man, you can't cure crazy. So it's crazy, you can't cure it. So therapy was viewed as wacky. It was
a lot of stigma.
Yeah, it was a big stigma. They were like, oh man, you guys don't mess with your head. And I walked in and I agreed. I was like, this is crazy, you guys are all nuts. And then they were like, hey, was your dad alcoholic? I was like, yeah, how do you know that, man? And then they were like, well, is your mom really religious? I said, hey, how do you know that? Everybody's reading my mail. And all of a sudden, I was like, whoa, this is me. Whoa, I had all these markers. Domestic violence in my past. All this macho ego stuff. Narcissistic tendencies. And I was going, oh my God, this is me. This is me, man. And I started to breathe out. I remember just going, you know what? There was a time, remember when everybody was talking about Galileo was talking about, hey man, he walked around and he was telling everybody, guess what? I think that we revolve around the sun. And they put him in jail. They said, you're an idiot, get out of here. You know what I mean? And turns out he was right. Now, I felt like that. I felt like finding out that instead of us, the sun going all around us, we went around the sun. And I mean, everything that I knew, everything that I stood on, everything that I thought was right was wrong. Man, I was like, and then I had to go down to square zero. Square zero. I remember talking funny, and I got rid of people that I thought were my friends. I got a new circle. I talked to myself a new way. Because it's the thing, when you do bad stuff, you talk to yourself bad. Like I would call myself an idiot. I would call myself like, oh man, you ain't shit. To myself.
So you're talking negatively
because I knew I was guilty.
Wow.
The stuff that comes with shame and all of these things. But what I learned was to speak differently about myself. Was to talk about myself differently. To tell myself, hey man, and this is how I did. I'm gonna tell you. And I got a technique that I want to share with everybody here. What I did is I took a picture myself at 8 years old, and I had no teeth, and I put it on my desktop, and I would look at that picture, and I remember that little boy who watched his brother get beat, and I was like, man, would you ever say the things you say about yourself to him? And I said, you are that little boy. You are still that young man. At no time in your life did you ever become another person. That's you. It's still you to this day. And that's the same, and that is true for every person in this room. You might think I'm grown up, it's different, I did too much. No! You are still that young person. And what I had to realize, I had to talk to myself. Because with a lot of guilt, a lot of shame, you feel like I'll never get out of it. But the only way is to get rid of that shame, man, and start over. This is what's so beautiful. And